episode 10. We're gonna do things a little differently in this episode. Normally, I like to have a complete story within an episode, even if we're just doing something as simple as rescaping a tank. You know, we'll start with what it looked like, we'll rescape it, and what it looks like afterwards. So you get some sort of complete story there, as opposed to just doing something and then, you know, okay, hang for part 2 in the future. And that's kind of where I'm at right now, is all my big projects. I have a lot going on, but I'm not done with anything. It's just, nothing's quite ready yet. Nothing's ready to show, you know, I can't tell the whole story. So I thought, well, you know what, let me do something a little different. Let me do what I do for my patrons. Let me give you a behind the scenes on the entire AquariumDomain Fish Basement Gallery. We'll just go tank by tank. I'll just show you, you know, what it looks like today and what I'm working on, and then we'll just feed the fish, you know, and see what we see. All right, let's check it out. Okay, the 125 Jungle Asian Stream tank. As always, still my lowest maintenance, easiest to maintain tank. Just humming along. Everyone's doing great. I think I said in the last video on this tank that I kicked up the lights a little bit, and I'm starting to see the growth. More growth, but still slower. I don't want to go crazy. I don't want to be a farmer of aquatic plants, but I do want them to grow a little more. And I did check the water, and I added a little bit of iron to go with the easy green that I'm doing. So I think what I might try for a little while is I like to keep sort of a simple routine. So I do the easy green once a week, just like it says. I might do the easy iron once a month. Because easy green does have iron in it, but I do have a lot of swords in here that are root feeders, and they do like a fair amount of iron. So I figured let's go ahead and try that, and then like as always, monitor the growth. Now there has been a couple things going on in the 125, not necessarily good things, but the rainbow fish that I had, all 4 of them, over the last few weeks, they just started dying off. They didn't show any signs of disease or anything. They just stopped eating one day and then kind of dead the next. And I was trying to figure out what was going on. And they looked, the bodies looked perfect when I took it out. And then I realized, I was like, well, how long have I had these fish? And I checked, I was like, I got them in 2012. So I was like, well, what is their lifespan? So I went and I looked, and I think 8 years is pretty much end of the line for those guys. I think they just died of old age, because it was all 4 of them over the course of like 3 weeks. They all did exactly the same thing. They were, they were obviously very large, very mature. So at any rate, that does leave an open spot for sort of my showpiece fish for this tank. So the 125 is going to be getting some new showpiece fish to go in with all these barbs and rasbors and everything. So that's coming for this tank. Let's go ahead and give these guys some food. Let me just put that in there. So what I feed these guys is a mix of some Tetracolor tropical granules and some Tetra Flake food. I do the mix because some of the larger fish, it's better to feed them with the granules. You kind of get more bang for your buck. Plus they sink, and there are some bottom feeders. Believe it or not, there actually are some coolie loaches in here, but you'll never see them. But they do get that food, and there are some rainbow sharks. Again, they're always hiding in the back, but they come out and they do eat. They get that food as well. Another thing I'm noticing is that my Siamese algae eaters, it's been a couple years that I've had those, and I thought I had 6 originally, and I only ever see 4 now. So I'm thinking 2 have died off over the years. And I kind of was thinking that I noticed that there's more algae growing on the plants than I remember. I just recently added these Panagara, and they're doing a great job on the rock, the wood, and the glass, but they don't really get on the leaves like the SAEs do. Other Panagara over here. So I think what I'm going to do is go ahead and get some more Siamese algae eaters for this tank, and also the new showpiece fish. So we got some things coming for the 125, and again, hopefully the changes I'm making with the upping the lighting a little bit and upping the fertilization a little bit, hopefully we'll see some bigger growth in some of these plants. All right, let's check out the 220. All right, the 220, we rescaped it. I'm happy with the scape. Plants are starting to grow in. They've been taken really well to the fertilization. Fish are doing great, but again, I screwed up. So I made a mistake on this tank a few weeks ago, probably actually right about 2 weeks ago now. It drives me nuts because when I purchase these fish, I take the responsibility of caring for them. Giving them a good home, giving them good food, pairing fish that match together, and I messed up. So I bought some tetra, just some penguin tetra right over here, and you only see 4 or 5 there, but there was originally 12. And I am revamping the area behind the 3,000 gallon where my quarantine system is, and it's torn down. And long story short, I didn't quarantine them. I put them in, and they had ick. So I lost some of them, and I lost 2 of my other fish. Thankfully, 99.8% of the fish in here are fine, but I did lose a few fish, and that is frustrating, and it was my fault. So if you ever get ick, if you can, this is what you do. This is what I did. I didn't use any medication. So what happened was I didn't actually notice the ick spots on the penguin tetra right away. I actually noticed my larger fish, the Geophagus and the Acara and the Severum, they were clamping their fins. So that's not a good sign. When they do that, that's a lot of time that they're under stress or duress. And that caused me to look closer at the tank, and that's when I saw the first little dot on the penguin tetra. And it's one of those things where it's important to spend a little time with your tank each day so you can see things like that and nip it in the bud. I think I got it really early. In fact, I know I did because I introduced the fish the night before and I saw this the following day, afternoon. So it didn't have a lot of time in there. And so what I did was I cranked up the temperature to 88 for the first 7 days and then 86 for the second 7 days, and that kills the ick. So what happens is when you see the dots on the fish, that is actually the wound from the ick parasite getting through their slime coat and getting into their skin. And what happens is they have a pretty short life cycle, and the reason you crank the temperature up is because it really shortens that life cycle. It gets it down to like 3 or 4 days instead of a week. And what happens is when the parasite dies, it drops off and it lays eggs in the substrate, and those eggs can't hatch. They can't live in that such a warm temperature, so you kill the cycle. So the fish can handle being attacked by the parasite for a couple days, and then when the parasite drops the eggs, you kill the eggs with the temperature, and then there's no new parasite free floating in the water to then attach back onto other fish. So as soon as I cranked the water up, literally 2 days later, I think they were like, might have, I don't know, cycle-wise on those fish, they might have just dropped off. So it didn't take long, and I mean, literally 2 days later, everybody looked great. No signs of ick anywhere. But what you got to do to play it safe, people have different time frames. In my opinion, I always go 2 weeks or 15 days with the temperature cranked up. And actually, tomorrow is the 15th day, and I will be turning the temperature back down. Okay, so big picture. Good things what are going in this tank. Good things are, other than the couple fish I lost, everyone else is doing awesome, and the plants are really, really responding and kicking in. I mean, so this guy here looked like that just a little bit ago, but now you can see they're really responding. These get blown around. I need to anchor those down. They don't really intend to be there, but they're there. Also, I have snail starting to grow in here, which I wanted for cleaning, plant leaves and detritus. And literally just the plants are just kicking. I got a few more types of Anubias, different varieties. I forget the names, but they are different types, different mix. And I put a few Amazon swords from the big tank over here. So everything's doing great. Everything's growing in, doing very well. I think what's going to come for this tank is I'm thinking about building a new sump. I would like to do something custom, utilize more space down there beyond what I have with this sump. So that might be the direction I go with this tank. That'll give me some more water volume and some more flexibility here. I've had some sediment issues here, so something I can do to take care of that. So let's get some food in here for these guys and check them out. So this is the same food that I fed the other tank. The only difference here is that while the larger fish will certainly eat the tetracolor topical granules, I do also put in some pellet foods for them, some small cichlid pellets, just so that I don't have to feed so heavy on all the other food. Something that sinks down for those guys and they can eat, as well as the cory cats. There's a lot of cory cats in here. They have a lot of place to hide, but there's a few different species, and I do have the 5 redhead geophagus, so they do an excellent job of keeping the substrate clean. So I go ahead and do those pellets so I don't have to overfeed on the flake and the granules to get enough down there for those bottom feeders. This way it's sort of a happy medium between the two. And as you can see, everybody just doing great, super healthy. It takes, gosh, I don't know, about a year. I would say the 125 probably took about 6 months to really get going good. I feel like this tank has been like a year to where I feel like it's really in good shape and I'm really happy with it. And I guess maybe a part of that was my original scape sucked, you know, and because it seems like since I fixed it, or at least fixed it in my eyes, it's been a lot better. All right. If you guys remember, there is the 3,000 gallon. This one gets a lot of cool comments. A lot of people have a lot of questions. So as you can see, let me just start with some changes. So I have increased the power of the lighting, and it's going to allow me to try some plants that I didn't have enough lighting before when I was running the wisteria. So what I've done is I've added 3 lily pads to go with the one I already had, which brings it up to 4 lily pads. So you have one over here on the far right, one in the middle that's between the power heads so they don't get blown around too much. And then, you know, we had the one right on the other side of the divider here, this one here that's, you know, growing crazy and huge. And now we've got a 4th one over here on the far left. And as you can see, we've also changed the plants out. So the wisteria is gone, all the Anubia stayed, and now we've added some dwarf sag plants to the front. So hopefully those will start taking off and we'll get the grasses growing in. And then in the back, I've added all kinds of Amazon and melon swords mixed in with those Anubias. So now they're small now, but they should grow quickly in here now the tank is getting quite mature. I am also fertilizing this tank now twice a week. So I'm doing everything I can to get all those swords back there and these grasses, and here's some smaller swords here in the front mixed in with the grasses, to get all of them growing as quickly as possible and get the softer look to the tank back that the wisteria gave you with the green. Now it's a little bit, you know, substrate or I should say hardscape, you know, heavy. A little bit too much of the rock and wood, not enough softness from the plants. So working on speeding that up as much as possible. Everything's responded well so far, the lighting, and I've only been fertilizing now for a week and a half, so we'll see, but I'm definitely keeping lots of tabs on it and keeping track of everything. One thing I wanted to address with the 3000, people ask me a lot of questions about the substrate. They're concerned about toxic gases building up in the sand substrate, and what do I do to prevent that? So let me just answer their questions, but I want to go ahead and just sort of talk about it as well. I think one thing is that anywhere you see that it's really built up, the embankment, you know, back over there, those are actually pond baskets with plant substrate, fluorite in them, and then just some larger rocks on top. That's not like a real thick, huge embankment, though. The water can move through it. And the sand you see in the front is not that deep. I mean, at the most 2 inches deep. And you have water flow. If you look at the plants along the bottom, you see how the water is coming from the back, down the front, and then back across that sand all the way down the entire tank. And that's on both sides. You can see other power heads there. They're all along the back. So they're keeping all of that water moving along the substrate. So what that does is it creates oxygenated water coming down to the substrate, which is creating a ton of aerobic bacteria, which is breaking down anything that gets to the substrate. It's also moving it back to those corners where I have the FX6s, and that's all they do. They just run sponges, and all they do is just take up any extra material that lasts that long. So I don't get a lot of buildup. I think some tanks where they have the substrate, they don't have a lot of water flow. You can get some buildup there. I do have a lot of water flow in here, keeping everything moving. And then the other thing is that cichlids, these are big cichlids and they like to play in the substrate. If you look here, I mean, they dig all the time. So they're keeping it turned up. Those things all work towards not getting the buildup in the first place, as well as I feed commercial food to these guys, so there's not a ton of waste. They're cichlids, they're messy eaters, but there's not huge chunks of shrimp or something, you know, laying down there that could really foul the tank. So there's a lot of things working to prevent that from happening. And then the other thing is, the tank is big. It's 3,000 gallons, so if you hit a little pocket of methane gas or something, like if the fish kick it up, it gets diluted in 3,000 gallons of water, so it doesn't actually hurt anything. Now, if I were to go, if there were a lot of methane gas in there, and I went through and I, you know, sifted all the sand manually or gravel vac it or something, and I released a ton of it in here, then that, yeah, that absolutely could be a problem. But if the occasional fish stirs up the occasional amount of it, with this much water volume and water movement, it just is not a, it's not a problem. There has never been a problem in the big cichlid tanks that I've kept. And I really, the size of this one, I think it would mitigate it even more. All right, let's get these guys some food and see if they're hungry. Well, I don't think that should go as any surprise. They're willing to eat, willing to oblige the feeding part of the video. Everybody's coming out. So some of the little Oscars, they weren't growing, they're finally starting to grow, so that's kind of nice. Still not the tiny lemon. I don't think he's going to ever change, but some of the other guys starting to pack on some pounds. Of course, the big pigs are still the big pigs, but everyone's doing good. This tank, fish have always been good. It's just kind of been a matter of getting this large natural ecoscape, you know, all built in and mature, and you know, like I talked about earlier, the lighting and the fertilizer. Hopefully I will be able to do it. It was easy to do with the wisteria. That's an easy plant to grow in here, and that's always an option, things like that. But I'm trying to go with you know, more of an authentic Amazonian setup, so we have, you know, some more authentic plants, you know, for an Amazon setup. So I think the swords will look pretty amazing when they get bigger, and I think, you know, when the grass grows in here along the front of the embankment, I think that'll be pretty cool as well. Should give a cool effect. It is a little tough taking out all the greenery from the wisteria, because it, you know, I thought it gave it a much nicer look. Oh, before I forget, you've seen it's a little cloudy in here today, and I actually was putting in the new plants just recently, so I just turned that up, so it's definitely not quite as clear as normal. But so that's almost everything for the 3,000. Before we go from this tank, one last thing. What do we have here? All the boxes from a fresh delivery of live fish. So what does that mean? That means in the grow out tank behind the 3,000 gallon are some new fish for the 3,000 gallon. And I hate to do this to you, but I'm not going to show you what they are. So they're going to be another video. And hopefully by the time they're grown out and introduced into the 3,000 gallon, these swords have really grown in, and the dwarf sage has grown in, and hopefully that'll be a nice video with a lot of positive change for the tank. Okay, let's go check out the 150 low-tech reef cube. Okay, here we are. So where I left it with the 150 cube is that we pretty much called it phase 1 complete. We had the fish stock, we had the corals, and we were getting a little bit overgrown with nuisance algae. And I don't know if you can tell, but there's a lot of new crabs and snails and whatnot everywhere. And we got the crew, we got the rest of the cleaning crew, both for the upper tank here and the refugium below. So now it is a matter of letting these guys do their job and start cleaning everything off, and they have been doing it. As well as we have a second type of macroalgae, so we have 2 types of macroalgae now, and we have a army of snails and crabs, and hermit crabs, and they've already, so if you sort of look kind of on the top of that rock, you can see that sort of algae that was growing these other places, and they've already just polished that off. So they are putting in some work in the tank. So, but it takes a little time. They've only been here a couple days, so you know, you got to give them some time. All right, let's give the fish a feeding and how to feed the fish. I entered a little bit too much there, but it will get polished off. There are shrimp, larger shrimp, coral banded shrimp, and there are emerald crabs in there, so they will take care of the extra. But fish hopefully will, actually this is the only feeding for the day for these guys. On the weekend I usually feed them a little less and a little heavier during the week. So they should be able to get rid of most of this, but that is a little more than I would normally feed. A little bit more slipped in. But hopefully they will take care of most of it. So what to expect with this tank is make sure the cleaning crew is on, is matched up nicely with the tank, which means, I don't have any of the excess algae I don't want, but I don't have starving cleaning crew, both in the top tank and in the refugium sump. This also has a whole bunch of new critters down there doing their job, keeping it clean, as well as the tank itself. And then after that, it's building up these corals. You can see we got some, some frags in there, but it's going to take some time. If anyone remembers the anemone, he's probably doubled in size now. Really starting to put on some size. Getting comfortable in here. So, a little bit of a waiting game. Unfortunately, when you're doing natural tanks, low-tech tanks, you got to be patient. You can't force these things. Nature takes time to build an ecosystem, so you just kind of have to wait. Okay, last but not least, I'm going to add these two together as the same system. So we have the 265 gallon, which right now is it's just a Fowler marine aquarium. Nothing, in my opinion, not very attractive. You just have mature live rock. You have nice fish. The fish are beautiful. And this tank has been running for a long time, 8 or 9 years. But what's going to happen is big changes. So this tank, if you remember, it is tied into the 700 gallon sump that it's sitting on top of. So you have the 265 on top of a 700 gallon sump, and then you have the new 600 gallon tank. Let me take you back around. So we're going to go into the room behind it, and you have the new 600 gallon aquarium, which I'm building right now, and then there's the 265 over there. I know you might be thinking, oh my gosh, that color is horrible. I thought about blue for saltwater, but I don't like the color, so it is going to get a third coat, and it's going to get black. So this will be black in here. So it'll be nice and neutral, and it won't look crazy. And actually, it kind of worked out anyways, because in the process of putting this blue coat, which was going to be the top coat, I found a couple spots that I wasn't happy with the coating. So I went ahead and fixed them and re-glassed them. And so now I'll put this black coat over top of it, and hopefully that will both fix it and look nicer. And if you recall, so here's the 700 gallon sump, and as you can see, what's going to happen is the plumbing is going to come from the 600 gallon over here and down, and it's going to drain into the 700 gallon sump. And there's a replacement pump with new plumbing which will go up and it'll feed the 265 and the 600. So the reason I'm talking about these together is that what's going to happen is all the fish, let me take you back around, all the fish from the 265 are going to be going into the 600 gallon. So everybody in here, not just the fish, but the live rock, the invertebrates, everything from here, except for the sand, is going to go into the 600 gallon along with some rock from the sump, and that's going to be built up, and that's going to be sort of a reef for larger fish species like large angels, large tangs, and then of course the other fish mixed in with them. So that should be really cool. And the nice thing is, since it's a connected system and it's already, everything is already cycled, it's just instantly cycled. So that tank will be, as soon as I'm done with the tank, which shouldn't be too long, I need the third coat of paint on there, the final coat. I need to paint the outside, do the plumbing, the glass is on its way, get that silicon in, water test it, and then I can connect up the systems and be good to go. So everything from here in the 600, and what does that mean? Well, everything being moved over to the 600 gallon, that means we have an empty 265 gallon saltwater tank that's plumbed into an overall 1,500 gallon system. So we have new fish coming to the 265. It's definitely going to be saltwater, and it's not going to be reef. So there's some hints for you. It should be pretty cool. It'll be a fish I've wanted to keep for a very long time, but have not been able to do so. And I'm finally going to be able to do it, so I'm looking forward to it. All right, that brings us all up to speed on everything going on in the fish basement. As you can see, there's a lot of projects that are happening, a lot of things that are growing out, things that should look cool in the future, and some new things that are coming, as well as I have another big tank project coming. It's probably a couple months away, but it's going to be impressive. Think something not like as big as a 3,000, but you know, maybe half that or something, right? So it's going to be, well, a little less than half, a third. Let's say a third of that. It'll be pretty cool. It should be pretty interesting. All right, well, thanks for watching, and hope you'll check back, because there's a lot more to come. Thanks.